Hi everyone, my name is Vijil and this is the third episode of Sales on Record. So in today's episode, we have two uh, brilliant folks with us as far as sales is concerned. We have Sachin as usual. He's the co-founder of Matricard and he has extensive experience, especially when it comes to selling in the international markets, specifically US markets. And this includes selling to both small and medium enterprises and selling to large humongous enterprises, large software solutions to these enterprises, right? And today we also have Mayank. Mayank has extensive experience in selling to large enterprises in the SCA region in India. Especially, he's a sales guy who has sold to everybody from large banks to insurance companies to enterprises with millions of people as employees or billions of dollars in revenue. So today, what I wanted to discuss, right? During the first two episodes, we covered, when is the right time to hire a salesperson when you're a startup and how to build your sales team out. Today, I want to talk about a very, very important aspect of sales, right? Especially when it comes to starting off or working in a startup or working in a small team. One of the things that all of us face irrespective of market condition is we don't have enough resources but we have large targets. So basically we don't have enough budget in marketing, we don't have enough sales people, but as a company, if we have to grow, if we have to show growth, right, we have to sell more, and we have to sell more with whatever is available, right? So today's question or today's topic of discussion is basically how do we improve sales even when we don't have all the resources that we want to improve the sales. That can be people, that can be more budget, that can be designers, that can be anything that we want, right? Limited resources, and we still have to achieve your target. Simple terms, do more with less. How do we do that in sales? Sachin, as usual, I'll start off with you, right? In today's environment, right, if you are looking at news, in the last 2 3 months, thousands of people have lost their jobs, companies are cutting costs, marketing budgets are going down. There's not enough freedom for marketing to actually experiment anymore. So people are trying to be, how do I say, responsible, cash responsible, right? They're trying to look at each type of spending. They're trying to limit each type of spending because they are afraid of what's happening in the market now, especially in the US market. So what I wanted to ask you was the core of the question. When such a thing happens, like let's say in US market, right, when people, both our customers who were before ready to convert easily, spend more money on our software, are not as how do I say, accessible as before, and our own companies who are not as open to spending money on on these activities, marketing or sales activities. How do you, in such a situation, what would be your plan of action to actually hit the target, right? The targets are not going to go down just because people have been let go. I have never seen a company said, okay boss, market condition is not good, let's reduce our targets. I've never seen that happen. So the targets are not going to go down. But you can't hire people, you can't do marketing. What is your first thing that you would do, or basically first step you would take? Or just skip to what would be your plan of action at such a stage, especially when you're selling to the US markets?
Thanks, Vijil, for having me, and thanks for the introduction and setting the context. So, as you mentioned, like doing more with less. So, the first thing you do is basically, as you said correctly, like doing more with less. You try to, as a sales leader, you do a couple of things to start with. Of course, take stock of the situation in terms of how your team has been doing in the last 2 quarters, let's say, to start with. Then you'd go to individually, like say, I mean, take it as an individual case with each of the sales reps that are part of your team, and have them basically have a one-on-one with them in terms of understanding what are their how does their quarter look like, the next 2 quarters look like for them. So which is basically taking stock of the situation, talking to your sales reps, and formulating a plan based on what their understanding of the market is as well, because they are your ears and eyes on in the market, right? You suddenly, as a leader, you can't formulate a plan, create a sales kickoff plan or something, and then give it to them to execute it. It has to be kind of a cumulative effort in terms of building that plan with your team. That's how you start. The next step I would say is basically, since you're saying you are cutting down on costs like marketing, spending on ads, or any kind of resource that is going to get you more leads. So you'll have to go deeper into the market in terms of approaching customers rather than expecting them to come to you, which is going to happen less as we progress in the next 2 quarters. So you would have to reach out to customers rather than relying on inbound as a channel. That would still be there, but you have to reach out to customers, and you don't have to reach out blindly to customers, but you have to be very specific in terms of your target outreach. So if I have to just jot down 3 things that I have to do to get started, let's say we are right at the beginning of the year, January, and we know what has happened in the last 6 months, we have to follow these 3 steps. That's how I would start kick off things from here.
Absolutely makes sense. So, Mayank, same question to you. Market is
Thanks,
slowing
Vijay. Yeah.
down. Budgets has been cut. There's not enough marketing budget left. You can't hire no more folks. Now you're at a point where you have to formulate something and you have to take those first steps. And your expertise is in India, selling to large enterprises, right? Let's stick to that. What would be your first step, to tackle this, where you don't have enough resources, but the targets are still the same? You still have to achieve those targets.
So I firmly believe in a great pipeline. So from a sales perspective, there should be a great pipeline for what people should be working on it, right? So my focus will be totally on the pipelines, the existing clients, right? What we have in the pipeline. And I think we had a 70 to 30% ratio probability of getting that closed, right? So if we work closely in terms of product requirement, the client requirement, and if we do a product fitment, right, and we meet the requirement, right, the key approach will be running behind to those customers, meeting them regularly, pitching the right product, solving their pain points so they can ease us. Because see, in the enterprise segment, as per the current scenario, right, solution selling is something probably what most people lack. That is something probably should be one of the approach, right? If you do go with that kind of approach to our customers, right, if you're solving their problems, right, definitely this numbers and all this business will come to you. Right? If you're not, it's not just salespeople should run only behind numbers. Right? So my key aspect will be focusing on the existing pipe. That is one thing. Now, if you talk about marketing spends and all this, I totally agree. What we can do is with the existing customers, right? Definitely there will be an existing customers, and I firmly believe India is a market where upselling and cross-selling are the key factors which increase your revenue, right? You go with a new product release with some kind of newsletters or something, right? Or an email campaigning, right? That is something even a salespeople can do that, right? Or the sales ops can do that, right? Or from a salespeople, right? You go with for a meetings and you pitch with a new products that has come up, right? Or so that is something through which you can increase the revenue and cover up your tax. So that are the aspects probably what I'll be focusing.
That makes sense, right? So let's say combining your and Sachin's point. So talking to your sales folks, getting what is the basically getting the stock of the situation, what happened in the last quarter, what's going to happen, and combining that with yours. What is your pipeline? That would give us an idea on basically what our current situation looks like in terms of sales, what can be expected. So once we take the stock of the situation and we know what our existing pipeline is, the next step is basically it makes sense to look at individual pipelines too, because as not
Right.
all sales folks are equal, right? As Sachin rightly said, and once we do that, you're saying it also makes sense to actually go to existing customers who are already there and try upsell to them. And for me, that makes sense in the sense it's easier to approach an existing customer, especially even if they're not like extremely happy, even if we're just doing
Correct.
what they were expected. And if that's being delivered, chances of them responding to us is much higher than going to a new customer. That actually completely makes sense. Now, I want to dig deep into these 3-4 aspects, right? Especially approaching customers, right? Sachin, on to you. Let's say one way to increase sales, right, is basically to approach new customers. Other ways to increase sales is approach existing customers and upsell and cross, right? So in your experience in the US, let's assume there is no CS team, we're a small team, there's only sales team, and they do the upsell and cross sell, which is usually the case with enterprise customers, because in their case they trust the sales guys, so it's easier for them to approach, right? But the question to you, if you have a salesperson or a couple of salespeople or a sales team which was supposed to reach out to new customers and upsell and cross sell, how would you divide their work? Like what would you say? Hey, this much for reach out for this much revenue. Would you say this for this much revenue reach out to new customers, or this much revenue reach out to existing customers, or would it matter at all that how they reach out or whom they reach out to, or is it like completely comes down to revenue? What would be your approach when it comes to balancing out reaching out to new customers and upselling and cross-selling?
Yeah, great question actually, and the situation we are in right now. So, I mean, I'm going from personal experience also. As Mike rightly said, so approach. I mean, upgrading a existing customer or upselling to existing customer is much easier than acquiring a new customer, completely new customer, because the sales cycle is going to be that much longer. So definitely, a certain percentage of time, and since I deal with like product software, software as a sale, I mean, SaaS kind of softwares. So here, upsell and cross-sell opportunities are there, but you also have to take in cognizance that a lot of customers are cutting down on their existing budgets as well, right? So not all customers would be open to upselling, especially in the US market. That's what I've been hearing. I mean, today itself, I was part of one of CRO calls, and there are like 30 odd CROs, and everyone was looking to cut down budgets. So it's you can't be, I mean, of course, completely reliant on upgrading or upselling or kind of cross-selling. So cross-selling, to an extent, you can say you can ask for introductions to other departments if your product is designed in such a way that you can sell it to multiple teams within the same organization, or maybe adding more users to the existing plan that you have sold to them. But that would be only if I say in very simple terms. Maybe 30% of the time of a sales rep. 70% of the time, I would still be focused on, especially considering the US market and in the mid and large enterprise also. Larger enterprise, of course, the sales cycle would increase much further. So you have to maybe in certain ways, instead of upgrading or maybe increasing the ticket size, you also have to look at customers slightly lower down, not large enterprise, maybe mid enterprise. So where maybe your sales cycle would slightly reduce. Again, you have to also take into consideration the budget should also be lesser. But that means you'll have to close more deals, but that the opportunities would be slightly higher. And so another thing what I have come across, especially in these times, it's always important. Where you might, all of us have might have heard of this. Sell it as a painkiller, not as a vitamin. So when times are good, you sell your software as a vitamin that, hey, you're doing this much business, or you're doing this much, as in this is your productivity of a sales guy or any software that you're selling them to. But right now, it's very appropriate that you sell it as a painkiller that, hey, this is the problem you're having, and this is the solution my software, my solution is going to give you. So that is the approach which is going to help kind of increase your sales or increase your the targets that you're trying to reach. So two things. One is 30% of the time you'd spend on existing customers if you are managing some part of the account management thing. And the second is selling it as a painkiller rather than a vitamin. In good times, you sell it as a vitamin because you're trying to enhance their productivity maybe or enhance their sales. And the third thing is focusing on coaching your existing sales team, right? So instead of course, you'll not have the budget to hire new people. So having them upgrade their skills, that could be through courses, that could be through just giving feedback. So that is one aspect these are the three things I would kind of focus on.
So Mayank, same question to you, right? If you had to choose at this point and you were going to sell it to the India market, Sachin covered the US market. And Sachin, I'm going to come back to you on the sell it as a painkiller part. That is really
Sure.
super interesting because not everybody understands that, right? And Mayank, in your case, I want to talk about solutioning a little bit, but before that, I want to get an answer to this, right? If you have a sales team and you have to divide their time between selling to new customers and selling to existing customers in the India market, considering you go behind these really large enterprises who have pretty long sales cycles, right? How would you divide their time?
So I firmly believe sales org structure should be divided into two parts, and this should be from the start itself, right? So there should be a hunting and a farming team. So one team who will be doing hunting will be totally focusing on the logo acquisition, right? You acquire logo as much as you can, right? That should be their KRA. And second, for a farming team, right? They work as an account manager. They are responsible for the revenue and growth and all this, for the upselling, cross-selling. So that's how these sales should be divided in the Indian market. It becomes difficult for a people, right, to acquire a new logo and to eventually also to grow the revenue from the existing clients, right? Because their focus will be diverse, right? So one people should not be able to do these two kinds of tasks, right? And for all these two roles, right, you need a different set of skill set peoples to deliver, right? One person cannot be a good hunter and a good farmer, right? It's very difficult to find that kind of skill sets in the Indian market, right? So that's how probably what we are, and I am doing from last couple of years, dividing team from the initial days into the hunting and the farming side.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So basically, you're saying hunters do the hunting, farmers do the farming for 100% of the
Yeah.
time, right? So are you saying that during times when budgets are being cut, right? Would you focus more on the farming team or the hunting team? Like, what would you do? Because hunting is going to be hard.
There should be a mixed approach, right? There should be a mixed approach. So all the sales people should have a great pipe, right? There should be a pipe there should be an existing pipe. That is one part of it. And probably we can also reach out to the clients whom we were not able to close, right? Or which might have been lost, right? That can be reinitiated through existing sales people who were working on that particular account, because at some point of time, these sales people had reached out to the customer, had been into a conversation, demos and all, right? But because of some of the regions, right, the conversion did not happen, right? And it becomes easier to reach out to them to reinitiate, right? And I think out of 100, right, I think there should be 25 to 30% of the probability of that deals getting converted. That is one of the approach. But coming that will be a hunter's approach basically. But going back to a farmers, right, right, farmers hardly budget matters, right, for them, right? For them, it's always a same approach, right? You do an account mapping, you start build a pipe, proper account mapping, and you start reaching out to a grassroots level and then grow the plan. That's how it works.
Makes sense. I'll come back to you on account mapping. You guys are giving me a lot of stuff to talk about. So, uh, okay. So, Sachin, going back to you selling it as a painkiller, right?
Hmm.
I'm assuming this has everything like a lot to do with what Mayank's solutioning. But I want to hear your approach, right? So, what do you mean selling it as a painkiller during hard times or where budgets are being cut versus selling it as a vitamin? If you can give me some thoughts into it, what exactly do you mean?
So it's very simple. Like, so see, when you are, as I said, like when you're selling in good times, people already have like good budgets. Like people have budgets to buy new softwares, try out new technologies, try out new things, and they would have a budget set for that. So there you have to work on enhancement. Let's say you're doing, let's say a particular customer or prospect of yours is doing 1 million in sales. How can you get them to 2 million? Or how can your software get them to do 2.5 million, or whatever, like the X, some percentage of the X that your software might help. But when in bad times, like say, or difficult times, not exactly bad times, but let's say I would say uncertain times, people are, I mean, right now people are in two minds, right? So should I buy this software? Is it going to help me? Will I be questioned in my organization? Will my leadership question this, whether this was the right investment or not the right investment? But if you pitch it as a painkiller, let's say you say that, hey, I see that, for example, our current tool itself, I will not name it, but let's say your tool is helping your organization to do better coaching or do better kind of help your sales team achieve bigger numbers. How can I help you plug in that leak, for example? That could be one question or one approach how you kind of sell your solution to. Instead of enhancing, you're basically helping uh, kill a problem or solve a problem for them, right? I mean, ultimately it's problems solution selling, as Mayank said, as rightly, but you are trying to just pitch it in a different language, right? So it happens generally. Also salespeople do that, right? So if you are selling a SaaS software, the same SaaS software would be different use cases for different teams, right? So for example, when you're selling a software solution to it could be this one software that you're selling to a product team, it could be a different pitch that you're doing, right? Or you're selling to a sales head, your pitch would be different. Like sales guys are kind of aggressive, you have to sell them that way, or you have to sell them in terms of numbers. But if you're selling to, let's say, a customer support head or something like that, the approach is different. They're trying to maybe reduce support queries. For them, the number thing doesn't matter. Number, when I say number in terms of revenue doesn't matter. For them, it's like, how can I get the same job done by instead of 100 sales support guys, I can get the job done by 70 guys or 50 guys. So that's where you're trying to plug in that problem and solve that problem with basically approaching that as a problem solver rather than a kind of enhancement. So that's it's just a language that you use, right? That language that you use in your emails, language that you use in your pitches or your presentations. So it's all about, the solution is still going to be the same, right? Your product doesn't change suddenly. Of course, some enhancement might come in here and there, but your product still remains the same in the next 2 quarters. It's not going to change suddenly to become a different solution altogether. So it's the approach, I would say, in one single word, or how you, the language, the approach, and customizing your language based on the audience that you're trying to talk to or pitch to.
Makes sense. So, Mayank, two things I'm going to ask you, right?
Yeah.
Sachin kind of covered a solutioning, right? So, but I'm going to ask you about two things. One is the solutioning that you mentioned, right? You said if there is solutioning, if like how Sachin said, if you are solving a pain point, if you are answering a pain point, chances of sales are more. Like that's going to be the case forever,
Correct.
right? Right. So I'm going to ask you about this. If you have to define solutioning, right? How would you define it? And second part of the question is, you spoke about account mapping when it comes to farming, right? As a way of figuring out how to upsell to them, right? Right. So how would you define these two things, solutioning and account mapping?
Sure. So let's capture the solutioning part first. Right? So as per the Indian sales market, right, or the sales people, if you talk about, right, majority of the sales people goes to a client meeting with a single mindset, right? I'll be just selling my product, right? They hardly listens to our customers. That's a major pain point, right? Or even if you talk, right, if there is incoming leads that is coming to a person, right, they end up pitching that particular thing as only, right? So what happens? Nobody is listening to our customers basically. Majority of the salespeople are not listening to our customers. They just go open their laptops, do the demo presentation, and that's it, right? The things their job is done. So, but that's not the case, right? We need to understand, right, what we customer is trying to achieve using your solution, right? Using your product. Right? What are the pain points you are solving, or you can solve using your product? That is something we are lacking. I think that should be a focus area, right? You need to map the requirement in a very appropriate manner. You need to understand, right? Yeah, this is the use case. Use case is something people hardly get into that kind of discussion, right? So use case is something sales folks should focus into, right? And through which you can do a solutioning, right? You can understand their requirements probably in a much higher sense, and through which you can end up selling much bigger uh, products, right? Probably. If you talk about the API industry, right? For example, right, if a requirement is coming for a one or two APIs, right, and probably salespeople end up selling that, right? But if your discussion is around the use case, right, there is a high probability you will be selling a 7 to 8 APIs, right? So that's how it probably works. And second prospect is if you're not talking sense to a customer, right? So listening, right? People will not take the sales guys seriously, right? There is high probability that the competitors will be competition is always a part of this ecosystem, right? Into the sales, right? And from a sales people perspective, you need to sell two things, right? You are selling to a customers, you are selling inside, and probably you are also competing with a competitor, right? And that's how your strategies should be, right? Mapping a customer properly.
And how do so for farm, so that's the solutioning part of things, right?
Yeah.
As you
From the
said.
account mapping part of it, right? What I feel is, people should do an account mapping properly, right? What it means is, if a salespeople has been assigned a particular bank, for example, they need to map the entire vertical view with all the stakeholders properly mapped from a top to bottom approach, right? And the best part is they need to find a champion. So that's a key aspect where majority of the people feel, right? They're not able to find a champion inside that particular vertical with that particular account who will be doing a sales inside that particular account, right? Every accounts and properly meet proper meetings with that respective accounts, plus with our regular feedback, different approach, right? See what happens with particular for probably for account mapping perspective, right? There is an deal that is an ongoing deal that is going on, right? There is a huge possibility that probably that key account managers can easily leverage that side of a business and they can penetrate into a different vertical, right? If you talk about the large enterprise in India, right, there are a bunch of vertical lines across that business, right, in the company. There are more than 10 to 15 verticals where they can easily penetrate in a 1 or 1.5 year timelines, right, where they can increase their revenue from 10 to 10x kind of thing. And the key approach should be properly mapping the key account stakeholders, finding a champion, going to a customer with a proper product fitment, and then probably finding a proper use case and understanding their business line, right? That is what I feel is probably what we lack. So understanding the business line and then probably pitching the product.
Okay, so I think I missed the mapping part of things during this conversation. So, like, if you had to define it, let's take an example. Let's say I'm selling to a bank in India, and I'm the key account manager. I've already sold to them. Now I have to upsell. But you mentioned before we can upsell, we have to map that account, right? I have to do account mapping. Now, how would I do account mapping step by step? What would be your process if you were given a bank? Let's say, let's not take a company's name here because again, but let's assume
Correct.
it's a large bank and you're given this bank. Now you want to do account mapping. What is your process? Like, how would you do that?
Now you need to identify the people, right? So let's take one of the bank and with let's say one of the vertical lines, right, which we're talking, right? Because mapping will be same across all the vertical, right? Now you need to identify person from a digital head, right? Because currently in the banks, this digital ecosystem, digital vertical is booming, and probably all the decisions are getting routed through that side of a table. Right? You need to identify people, map the people from a digital team. You need to identify people from a business side of it. Then eventually from the tech side of it. Then comes to a chief architect who probably do the POC and probably and then the ISO side of a business, right? So the who do that security, cyber, and all this. And somehow the tech spoke, right? These are the 5, 6 different people, right, whom you should map it. And among these people, right, you should find a champion, basically. The champion means probably the people who will be selling your product inside that bank, probably who will be doing your part, making your part easy, right? That's probably what I feel is the best to have thing. So that makes your work easier.
Got it. Got it. Okay, we'll come back to this. But let's go into the part of where we are increasing sales. Right now, we've spoken about one of the ways to increase sales is to reach out to new customers, of course, and sell to existing customers, of course. Got it. And but another way to do it is basically now because we can't hire new folks. One way is to do it to reach out to more customers, right? But there is a limit to how much a particular salesperson can do, right? Every salesperson has their own limit. Some salespeople can reach out to 30, 40, 50 clients a day. Some salespeople are stuck between at 15 to 20 clients per day. So I believe one of the approaches that we can take is to improve the productivity of each salesperson, right? So Sachin, this question is first for you as usual. uh, if improving the productivity of a salesperson is one of the ways, right, uh, to increase sales, that's what I believe. What would be your approach to improving this productivity? How would you start? How would you like begin doing this?
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, that's one of the, I mean, that's the next step probably once you have identified who are your guys who's going to be delivering on the numbers that you have been like required to achieve. So yeah, first thing, of course, like being able to uh, help these guys, because you have to manage this within a certain budget, within a certain number of people. So automation is one thing I believe is definitely going to help you achieve those numbers, because you have to do more with less, as you said, right? So you have to use all the tools that you can with as the budget lower budget as possible, and then basically maximizing the output of your existing team, right? I mean, it's all good closing deals and all those, that is going to come later, but the first step is basically being able to leverage the existing tools, or maybe even having a new tool to help your team members achieve those numbers. So that could be a sales automation tool, that could be a sales engagement tool. So because say if you have, let's say, 3 guys in your team, earlier you might have like 5 guys, 6 guys, might be you're left with just 3 guys who would be helping you achieve those numbers. So you have to give them the appropriate tools or the right tools for them to achieve the numbers which would have been ideally achieved by 5 people, right? So that there these automation tool kind of comes in. And the third aspect is, since you have, I mean, more time probably because you're managing less number of people, so you have more time to kind of coach them, help them improve on what they are already doing in terms of the sales process, in terms of what they are doing in their demos, in terms of what they are doing in their calls, or how they are approaching generally the customers, or how they are approaching basically selling the solution or the software that they are trying to sell to your customers. So these are the 3 things: automation, being able to coach them, or helping them with upgrading the skills, or basically helping them with their existing uh, like the deals that they are going through. So yeah, that's how I would approach that as.
Okay, so Mayank, so this was what Sachin said, right? There is automation, there is coaching, there is helping with existing deals. Now, in your case, as I understand, in most of the customers that you close, you actually go to them and meet them, right? Uh,
Correct.
right, and remote sales or selling internationally while sitting here has its own good things and bad things, in the sense, once I don't have to go to US and meet a customer. They are comfortable with talking to me over phone, right? In
Correct.
India, large enterprises are not as such. The first thing
Correct.
but that I heard when I started selling to large enterprises in India was, can you come down and meet me, right? You're not
Correct.
even large, like even medium. So the dynamics changes there, right? Automation
Correct.
still might play a role, but this is not as significant as it would be with remote sales, right? As
Correct.
you might not be able to use it with enterprise in India,
Correct.
large enterprises, traditional enterprises. So if you have to increase productivity of your sales folks, right,
Mhm.
and automation is not one of the things, coaching might be. But you tell me, like, if you had a team and you had to increase their productivity, right, and you do not have a budget, right, and you cannot increase the number of folks, so you have to increase the productivity of the salespeople, so ultimately they can increase the number of the numbers, sales numbers
Mhm.
themselves. how would you approach that? What would be your methodology?
It's as Sachin said, right? Coaching, mentoring them, right? It's one of the major things through which you can increase it, right? But what I firmly believe is shadowing them with a for them with them for a client meetings, right? That is something where you lead for the initial few meetings, right? Probably a leader should lead that meeting, and through which particular sales people get some idea, right? How to crack a conversation, how to start a conversation, and how to leverage that the entire meeting time. After a few meetings, you take a back seat and ask them to lead that, and probably slowly pitch in where they are lacking, right? And that this will eventually help them to come as a better salesperson initially after 15 to 20 meetings, right? Probably that's again something that should be one of the approach. So what I firmly believe is I should be focusing that there can be a three set of account, right? Small, medium, large. So bandwidth should be divided, right? If a large enterprise is generating a revenue of somewhere around 1 CR as an MRR, whereas the small enterprise is generating a somewhere around 2 lakhs of MRR, right? Definitely the bandwidth should be much on the large enterprise, right? Because you are getting 100x of what the small enterprise is giving, right? So that's how people should be trained, right? How to divide your bandwidth as compared to our deals.
So you're saying three things, Mike. One is shadowing. Second is proper use of a CRM to basically map your accounts into small, medium, large enterprises. And once
Right.
you do that, ultimately you divide your bandwidth based on what type of enterprise are there in your pipeline. So if it's a large enterprise, spend more time with them because they're going to give you
Right.
X, 10x the amount of revenue as a small enterprise. So you have to divide your bandwidth like that. Understood. Okay. So you also spoke about a little bit of coaching, right? So I want to dig again from a coaching and mentoring perspective, right? I understand shadowing is one thing, right? But if I had to be definite, so Sachin, again coming back to you, as you said, right? If I had to be definite way of coaching a salesperson, right? Just saying shadowing, I might not understand, right? So what happens as a sales leader, as a new sales manager, what I did was when I was helping shadow, or I was allowing somebody to shadow me, in most cases I just took on the lead and basically closed it off and gave it to them, right? It took me some time to in understanding ki, hey, this is the right part where I should let off so that they can take
Yeah.
up, right? So if you have to if I ask you, hey Sachin, what is the definite way, like what are the step-by-step way that you would follow in coaching your salesperson so that their productivity improves? What would be the steps that you would follow?
Yeah, that's a very interesting problem right now, especially in the context that you asked. So yeah, see, there is no short way. So it's very individualized. I would say personalized, because every individual reacts to, let's say, for example, shadowing in different ways. So you have to go sales rep by sales rep probably. So some sales rep probably prefer you to be on the calls to give them that confidence that somebody is there to cover for me if I miss something, or if I'm lacking something, or maybe answering customers' questions. But there are another set of salespeople who'd rather be coached before the call, maybe, or after the call, or after the customer meeting, if I say like general parlance. So that's if that's the way they prefer, probably you should allow them to do that, unless there comes a situation where you have to shadow them, for example, or you have to be on the calls with them, which could be, let's say, a pricing call, for example, where you want to be there. Let them lead the call, of course. But yeah, you be there in terms of answering any questions or answering any, give them, just give the customer in terms of that there is authority on the call who is, I mean, ready to take some decisions on the call itself if required. So there is no, in very simple words, there is no one single approach, I would say, in terms of kind of coaching people. So it's very, especially when you are managing a smaller team, probably it's much, I mean, it's easier to kind of take a personalized approach where what is the method of coaching which kind of works for a particular individual sales rep and what doesn't work, and what is they prefer, because sometimes they might prefer you not to shadow them, but you know that based on the previous meetings that they've had, probably you being on the call as a manager or as a sales lead would help that close that deal probably sooner, or maybe reduce the sales cycle in some sense. So I would say it's one single approach. But having said that, again, first is of course understanding what kind of approach works. That's first step. Second is, once you've identified that a certain kind of approach works with a particular sales rep, uh, follow that. And third and most important is taking stock of uh, how the things went in the last, let's say, last 5 meetings or last 3 meetings or last 5 deals that close or didn't close. So kind of analyzing that, and that could come from CRM, or that could come from any platform that you use for collating all these deals. CRM most probably, because you'd know that what happened when you shadow or maybe helped a sales rep coach them before or after the call. How did that deal pan out, or how that deal kind of closed or did not close. So these are the three things in a nutshell I would kind of suggest in terms of kind of coaching people.
Got it. Mike, same question to you. There's a difference in this, right? For example, if I was a sales guy, it's easy for Sachin to join my calls and then go back to his work, right? Because I'm on a call. But in your case, you go and shadow a salesperson, your day is gone. So as a manager of enterprise sales folks who meet clients in their offices, if you allow somebody to shadow, or if you're shadowing somebody, you cannot do anything else, right? Because the entire day is gone in the shadowing. And especially this becomes a problem if you have 10, 20, 30 people, right? Like you have large team, right? You've held on to large teams. If you're 10, 20, 30 people, that means you'll spend the entire month or quarters just shadowing them. Right? The shadow can be one approach for a new sales guy at the beginning, but I believe that might not be the definite way of doing, improving the productivity of sales folks or coaching them. What is your usual approach apart from shadowing, especially when it comes to coaching sales folks, selling enterprise deals on the field, meeting the clients, right? What has been your approach? You're on mute, Sajid. Bank.
So there's a regular trainings, right? Probably bi-monthly that probably I usually do with my people. And probably I then probably get into a mock kind of session, right? With different mock sessions. Right? That is something what I do. And you said, right? You said it correctly that it becomes difficult for me to, since if I'm leading a team, and probably even if a large team, right, to get on a calls with all the people, right? What I did in the past was I had created a buddy. So there are people in the system from past, right? They have been working with the companies from long, right? So we usually make them a buddy who probably helps them in the initial days, uh, for the new joiner, right? For their meetings, and through which from ground zero that at least they comes to 50 to a 60% from ground zero. That has eventually helped us, right? And for an enterprise leader, even that task gets reduced, right? And so again, in terms of the bandwidth, right? That is something what I prefer. And third is something for some of the deals, right? What we feel is let the people lead it, right? There might be a probability how you can lose it, right? But you can get a lot of learnings from that particular deal, right? What went wrong, what went good, right? All that uh, analysis is something you can do that.
Understood. Okay. So that covers a bunch of different questions that I've had, right? So I'm going to jump into supporting, right? Like now, sales as a single team does not work in the sense
Correct.
you need the tech team, you need your product team, right? Irrespective of what you're selling, even if you're selling to large enterprises in India or medium enterprises in US, or large enterprises in US remotely, you need the product team, you need your support team, you need your CS team,
Correct.
right? Uh, but this is like, what does the salespeople need is not exactly written anywhere, right? um, when I used to have these meetings with marketing before as a salesperson, or meetings with CS or customer support team, instead of having a conversation, it would be a fight, right? where marketing would say you're not reaching out to leads enough, or support would say you have sold to the wrong person, or customer success would say they don't have a requirement. What have you done? Versus salespeople saying ki leads are bad and CS is not doing their job. So it becomes an argument than a conversation over
No,
time, right?
what I believe, Vijay, is I totally agree your point here. But what I firmly believe is a good salespeople, right? He need to sell to a client. He need to sell himself internally to the organization, right? Where his relationship building basically comes, and probably that's the best way to judge a salespeople, right? If you're good in a relationship building, right? It should not only with the client, right? It should be with the internal company stakeholders, right? That is something a salespeople should be good at.
Absolutely, absolutely. See,
If
that's
he's
the
good, right, maybe that solves that problem, right?
that's a given, right? But again, as I said, so you can build relationships, but ultimately, because all of us are trying to do our own jobs, which might be in the
Correct.
same direction, there is always friction, right? One way or another. The reason I believe there is friction is because it is not defined on what is expected from the other teams. So what does
Correct.
sales expect from other teams? So as usual, Sachin, I'm going to ask you first from a US perspective. Then I'm going to ask Mayank, because I think Mayank has a lot to say on this particular subject. So Sachin, on to you. What does sales expect from the other teams, especially when, as I said, right, in a situation where there's not enough resources, where help is much needed? What does sales expect from other teams in terms of help, or in terms of guidelines, or not even help, right? Hey, this is something that I expect for the minimum. Like, I'm not asking you to change the world, right? So if I had to say 4 5 things, hey, these are the 4 5 things that sales would need from the other teams within the organization so that we can do our job well, what would be those? Like, especially when you're selling to US market, what would be those in your opinion? If you had to write it down, it's kind of a commandments, right? These are the 12 commandments of sales from other teams that we expect, and we can do our job best in the best way possible. If you do this, what would that be?
So more important than what you expect other people to do, it's important to understand what other people are expecting from you as well. That's the starting point. But yeah, having said that, I mean, coming to the main point, what workable points. First thing is, as Mayank has said as well, and we had discussed this in one of the podcasts earlier as well, that more than, especially in larger enterprises, I mean, when you're a salesperson in larger enterprise, it more than the external selling, you also have to do a lot of internal selling, and not just to your boss or manager, but also to internal organizations or internal mini departments or internal organizations, like, let's say, customer success or support or marketing. And so these are the 3 4 things I have been doing as well, where starting with marketing. So with marketing, you have to share as transparent information as possible. Some of that information is now easily available because we are all recording calls, we are recording these meetings, so that data is available. And I mean, that data is also available in the CRMs as well. So communicating what the customer, or what the kind of reactions, or what kind of feedback you're getting from customers, or what kind of let's say in terms of insights that you're getting from customers, being able to share that with marketing very transparently, very openly, and then expecting basically marketing take action based on that. So I'll give you an example. For example, let's say you're getting a certain kind of leads which are not kind of converting into deals, or not converting into opportunities. So instead of taking an approach where you say that these leads are not good, give like workable or kind of constructive feedback to your marketing team, that, hey, this is how it is happening, or this is how it has been panning out in the last, let's say, 3 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and this is what we expect, right? And then there should be a common ground on which a marketing and a sales rep should agree on, that, okay, this is the approach which is going to kind of work. It might still not work, but at least you have a common ground. And here, what is happening here, there is complete transparency, since you are sharing those insights or workable insights with your marketing. So that's one approach. being very transparent and open with the insight that you get from your customers, passing it on to your marketing. With customer success and support, I'll club it, support and success, kind of together, because more or less it's kind of same, although the jobs that they do is very different, vastly different. One is proactive and one is kind of on the go. So in terms of approaching your relationship, or basically getting things to work, or kind of help that you need, or expectation in terms of its success and support, here the handover has to be very, very smooth. So when I say handover, basically the things that has been shared by the customer, all of that insights, at least a bullet point of list of insights that you expect is going to help the customer success rep build a better relationship with your customer, is going to help you build a kind of a better relationship with your customer success team as well. So again, information and insights, but here you are passing out that insight, which is going to help your success team or your support team kind of maybe upsell in the future, or cross-sell in the future, and also build a long-lasting relationship. So the handover process has to be pretty smooth and well designed, and kind of very informative for the both other side of things. And the third thing is where you are able to have these open conversations with any team for that matter, and being able to sell that. So because you are basically dealing with customer, you're the eyes and ears for these teams. They are not interacting with the customer directly, right? So you as a sales rep are interacting with the customer almost on a daily basis, if not weekly or monthly basis. And that information, or that insights that you get from the customer, you should be able to sell that as, or pitch that as a kind of a deal, or as an opportunity which is worth pursuing for them as well. So these are the three things I would do with all these three aspects that I would kind of cover when I'm looking to kind of build a sales pipeline, as well as closing deals, or upselling, cross-selling as well.
Makes sense. So Mayank, same question to you. What do you expect? What are the things that you would say, okay, hey, if to the other teams, like within the organization, hey, if you help me with these 4-5 things, it would really help me close deals faster, have more revenue, right? And we also spoke about having this what do you say, an understanding of the other team, or selling internally. So I would also like to you to put some light on that aspect of things too. So first question, to Mayank, what are the 3-4 things that you would say that other teams should do in along with sales, so that sales can do their job better? And second is basically these conversations that you have with the other teams, right? Uh, or building a relationship with, or selling internally, right? How do you do that better?
Got it.
Yeah.
So first of all, first thing should be focusing on the tag. Tag is something that is one of the major aspect of getting a deal done, right? That is something what majority of the organization are lacking, right? Second thing should be focusing on the customer delight. So once we onboard a customer, right, we probably forget them. So where we lack a customer delight, right? So that's a standard practice in Indian ecosystem. So that's how it works, right? That is two things is the must to have things where we used to do that. And third is with a proper marketing support, right? Because that helps you to generate leads, right? Probably now this should be what I feel. This should be a joint call between product, sales, and marketing, right? Because product comes with a new new products, and the release and probably the sales team are very closely working in the markets, and they are working on a ground levels, and through which they can leverage and they can do campaigns and all this, right? This should be a joint pitch campaign from all these three sets of the stakeholders. So that's my three take points on this. I can't hear you. Vijay. You are not
Sorry,
audible.
yeah. And talking about selling internally. So you spoke about selling internally and building a relationship,
Yeah.
right? How do you go about that?
Now, see, that can be an offline with getting into a drinks, you do bonding with the people, right? That's probably what salespeople do, right? These days. So see how it works is eventually if you're selling to a big enterprise, right? In India, Indian mindset, right? People mindset, right? They will ask your product people to join that call and probably demonstrate, right? And even at some sort of certain point, right? Sales people, however equipped he is, he'll not be able to answer that set of questions, right? If a chief product officer of a bank is coming on a call and he's asking with a question, right? You need your product head, you need your tech head on that call, right? So that is something I think people should be working on very closely, right? Even what I feel is product managers also comes hardly people knows, right? From a sales perspective, that product managers, they are the owner of particular products, right? And they also carry a revenue target of that product, right? So I think you should, even they are carrying a sales quota. You should have a very firm relation with these set of peoples, and you should always leverage their product to increase the revenue, even for a company. And if the revenue gets increased, then eventually their numbers gets increased. Right? That is one part of it, right? Second thing is, right, eventually there are a lot of products that gets built up in the organization, right? But not all products perform or get sold, right? There might be five products, right? Out of which three are working or two are working very fine, one is working mid size of it, and two are like working like anything, nothing, right? But that's not the product. It's not because that product is lacking on something. It's because in terms of support or in terms of proper mapping of it or a reach out perspective or the approach of selling, right? There might be a probability, right? The major reason why it happens is sales people are not getting support, right? What happens is in some of the cases, what we have seen is tech or a product people, it's become difficult for the sales people to pull them on the client calls, right? So that is something I think internal relationship is mandatory, right? You build a personal relationship with these kind of people inside, and then probably once that is done, what I have seen is that because if once that is being done, right, eventually even before 5 minutes, right, if you ask them to jump on a call, they will, if their calendar permits, right, eventually they will jump on that call. So that's the key mantra why we should probably sell ourselves more. Probably a salespeople should sell himself more in the organization rather than trying to apply.
Got it. Got
Well,
it.
what even you might have seen, right? 30% of the pipeline deals or deals eventually does not get closed because of these internal reasons.
Makes sense. Okay. One final question to both of you, right? Sachin, again, beginning with you. Uh, a lot of people have been let go, right? Uh, and it doesn't matter how much of productivity increase we do, how much automation we do. Ultimately, sales comes down, especially if you're selling a little mid-size or larger deals. Sales come down to people, right? Nobody's going to pay me at maybe $10,000 without talking to somebody, right? And if you want to increase that, one person can only, or let's say three, four people can only take so many calls a day, right? There's a limit to it. Videos help, content helps, but ultimately they will talk to people, right? So my question to you, what type of companies should be hiring right now most of those folks? Or should they be hiring at all, considering the fear that's there in the market in terms of the future of the market itself, right? So a two-part question: should we be hiring? Second, if yes, which organization should be hiring? Because over hiring is a problem, right?
Mhm.
All of us know that. Like startups, a lot of companies have to get a overflow of cash, and they hire a lot of folks, and they don't know what to do with them, and they're sitting on the bench, right? That happens a lot, even with large companies. So my question to you, should we be hiring? And if yes, what would be the criteria to say, hey, this is the right time to hire, considering the market that's happening?
So overhiring definitely is a problem in some cases. But yeah, see, a good salesperson will justify his compensation. So that's my belief. And especially in difficult times like this, when it's difficult to sell, and people are, of course, not everybody is looking to move out, but there are always people who are, I mean, who are right there looking for the right opportunity. So hiring, especially in the startup context, I would say, never stops. And if your product is evolved enough or ready enough to be sold, I mean, to a wider audience, why not hire the people? But don't overhire, I would say. Not the way you'd hire maybe in 2021. People were hiring, like going crazy nuts about hiring people, just filling up the numbers. And the HR guys were contributing towards that. But very simple, like in toward answer, like yes, always. I mean, there are good salesperson would always hire, always justify their compensation. So there is no point in stopping that hiring. But at the same time, don't hire people just for filling your numbers. And what was the second question? Can you come back to that?
Okay, one is overhiring,
Mm.
like should we hire? Second is like, if hiring is okay, what is the criteria to say, okay, it's okay to hire for the company? Like, is it revenue? Is it leads? What is the criteria to say it's okay to hire right now?
So the criteria is always whether you have found the right person. And I'm talking from a startup perspective completely, not from a mid or large enterprise perspective. There again, it's different numbers working there, right? So here you are looking to always grow, right? Not that other companies are not, but in a startup, like growth is the only thing that is going to keep you going. That is going to keep the kind of bells ringing and all those things. So always hire, but look at the skills. I mean, is this guy the right person for your organization, and is this guy going to kind of justify the hiring thing, as in that you're doing, the compensation that you'll be paying to them? And if you found the right person, recession, no recession, uncertain times, uneconomic, I mean, economic business environment is not good, doesn't matter. People will still be able to achieve the numbers. And even if they don't achieve the numbers now, probably they'll achieve in the next quarter and so on. So that happens. So as long as you have that budget to hire, always look to hire people if they are the right fit for your company.
Makes sense. Mayank, uh, in your case, this is a little different in the
Correct.
sense, you have a larger team, you're going beyond large enterprises. That means you have your sales cycles are large, 6, 7, 8 months, right? So, and it would take that much time for a person to actually build their pipeline to
Correct.
considering the type of sales you do. So, same question to you. Considering the economic or market situation, or the fear that's there in the market about the market situation, is it all right to hire? And if it is all right to hire, how would you say this is the criteria? I've hit this criteria, and based on this criteria, it's okay to hire. Like, what is that criteria? So, first question: is it all right to hire? And what is the criteria which says it is all right to hire in terms of the organization?
What I currently feel is in Indian market economics, right, especially for the banking and the BFSI side of it, demand and supply is always there and will always be there. Right? That was parallel with this ecosystem. Probably we should be hiring. We should keep hiring always, right? Because uh, it's very difficult to find a good product fit guy, right? Probably a sales guy, right? In terms of fitment is something a major challenge, probably what we see. So that process should keep on rolling, and probably eventually you get a good fit guys. Right? If you talk about the BFSI sales cycle, large enterprise sales cycle, it's eventually 7, 8 months, right? Probably. So eventually, in Indian startups, the layoffs are not that much of concern. Probably we are not seeing that much of layoffs in Indian ecosystem startups. Right? Eventually, that is with the foreign companies that is coming across. Right? So yes, I think these processes should be parallel in nature, and we should keep.
Understood. Okay. So, I mean, that was my last question, right? And this was I mean, we've crossed an hour or so of our conversation, and we didn't realize. So I want to end this with this, right? Hiring, or especially considering the market, there are a bunch of different aspects that we can look at. Increasing sales is always going to be a KPI, but this can be done without spending too much or without spending any budget at all, right? If there is no budget, and this can be done through automation. This can be done through coaching and improving the how is the performance of each salesperson individually. This can be done by working with other teams and figuring out ways to minimize CAC. We call it in SaaS. How can we do that? This can be done by improving the performance or of each farmer, or in startups case, the salesperson can upsell better. And this can be done by hiring the right fitting guy, right? And that's the reason we spoke about all these different aspects or different questions that I wanted you guys to answer. Fun conversation. And I'm going to share this conversation with you guys after this call. And it was good talking to you guys. Thank you so much.